honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns thought their biggest issue was just finding someone, anyone, who could throw the ball straight. But then Jason Kelce, freshly retired and supposed to be chilling with beers and golf carts, decided to drop a truth bomb so wild it sent the Browns' billionaire owner into full-blown meltdown mode. I'm talking pacing around the office, red-faced, muttering to himself, maybe even Googling how to buy a new NFL team levels of chaos. What did Kelce say that has the front office sweating like they just blew another playoff chance? Oh, this one's uglier than their offensive line in week 3. The Browns have built an entire legacy out of heartbreak and accidental comedy. If there were a championship ring for most creative ways to lose, Cleveland would be dynasty level unstoppable. Every year they find a new way to trip over their own cleats, and fans, bless their loyal broken hearts.
The Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
Just keep coming back for more. You'd think after decades of misery they'd be immune, but no, the dog pound stays barking even as the house burns down. And here comes Jason Kelce, retired legend, truth teller, chaos agent. Instead of staying quiet and counting his golf balls, he basically said, "Congrats, Cleveland. You built a house of cards and set it on fire." Boom! Just like that, all the fake smiles in the front office turned into panic. The owner went from calm and collected to full panic mode, probably yelling at interns to fix the narrative while throwing a stress ball across the room. Let's be real though, this is classic Browns energy. This is the same franchise that once looked at Johnny Manziel and said, "Yup, that's our savior." The same crew that doubled down on Hugh Jackson like a bad poker hand, and later bet the future on Deshaun Watson like it was a clearance sale for scandals. They keep reinventing disaster like it's a creative pursuit. And yet, the fans keep showing up season after season, heartbreak after heartbreak.
With the lowest cab drivers, you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that? Now, what's more horrible about this game was
they buy the tickets, wear the gear, and somehow still believe. And for a second, this past season gave them hope. It wasn't total chaos. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like the Browns were finally turning the corner. But in Cleveland, peace never lasts long. The Browns front office was already throwing themselves a little victory party. Kevin Stefanski was being crowned a genius. The dog pound was louder than ever, and the city was buzzing like they'd finally cracked the code. But then, bam! Reality showed up, and it didn't knock politely. It came swinging. Jason Kelce grabbed the Browns by the collar and put them in a verbal headlock that left everyone gasping. Kelce, the man who spent his career bulldozing defenses with the Eagles and stealing hearts at parades dressed like a mummer, has officially hit retirement with zero filter and maximum smoke. And when he looked at Cleveland, he didn't see a contender. He saw a team desperately duct taping disasters together and calling it innovation. He might as well have held up a giant flashing sign that said, "Cleveland, you're in trouble." Normally, the Browns ownership would roll their eyes at stuff like this. They've heard every insult under the sun.
At the start, he's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is who's going to be the backup in Cleveland. Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they opened the season against the...
But this wasn't some podcast bro yelling into a mic. This was Jason freaking Kelce, a Super Bowl champion, one of the most respected voices in the league, a man who knows what a real functioning organization looks like. So when he talks, people listen. And when people start listening, Jimmy Haslam, the Browns' billionaire owner, starts losing it. Picture the scene. Haslam pacing like a storm in a suit, mumbling about loyalty and disrespect, while his assistants duck behind their laptops like they're avoiding flying office supplies. This man has already sold the franchise's soul for Deshaun Watson's $230 million fully guaranteed deal. And what did he get for it? A quarterback who missed games, looked rusty when he did play, and left the team's finances gasping for air. Kelce didn't even say anything outrageous. He just told the truth. He basically pointed out that Cleveland chained itself to a quarterback who hasn't looked elite in years. And hearing that truth from him, it hit harder than any sack Watson's taken on the field. Even Joe Flacco's surprise playoff run couldn't hide the ticking time bomb inside the Browns organization. And here's where the comedy hits peak Cleveland, because the front office doesn't get mad at what's true, they get mad when someone dares to say it out loud. It's like a magician throwing a tantrum because the crowd figured out the rabbit was in the hat the whole time. You can't fool the audience forever, and Jason Kelce just pulled the curtain all the way back. The fans, they weren't shocked, they were nodding. Browns fans have a sixth sense for disaster, like storm chasers who know when the tornado's coming.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like they should be on the team. And if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player. I think about myself in a high regard.
They've seen heartbreak in every possible form. Missed kicks, fumbled dreams, cursed seasons. They can spot trouble from a mile away. And now with an aging defense nagging injuries and a salary cap eaten alive by one quarterback's bloated deal, the Browns are just one ACL tear away from implosion. And let's not pretend the AFC North is some friendly backyard league. The Ravens have Lamar Jackson, moving like he's got cheat codes built into his DNA. The Bengals have Joe Burrow, who could show up in a hospital gown and still drop dimes on defenses. The Steelers, please. They never fall apart, they just reload. Mike Tomlin runs that team like a factory for toughness and quiet revenge. Meanwhile, the Browns are that poor kid at recess who finally learns to tie his shoes only to trip over them 5 seconds later. Jason Kelce didn't just throw shade, he threw precision-guided truth bombs. He poked a nerve so deep the whole city flinched. He reminded everyone that Cleveland's bright future looks less like a Super Bowl roadmap and more like a never-ending parking ticket, collecting late fees with every bad decision. And Haslam, he couldn't handle it. Not because Kelce was wrong, but because the truth stung worse than any headline. When words like that come from Jason Kelce, they don't just echo, they roar. And Jimmy Haslam, he's never been the type to handle criticism with grace.
I think starts for the Browns at quarterback.
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
You got a problem.
you have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. No, that kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised when you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback.
This is the same man who turned the Browns into his personal science project, cycling through coaches and quarterbacks like spoiled milk in a discount store. And now, with Jason Kelce casually pointing out the obvious truth, Haslam reportedly went nuclear. You'd think someone insulted his grandmother instead of his football team? It's wild. Imagine being a billionaire losing sleep over what a retired lineman said from his couch. A guy who doesn't even play in your division anymore. But here's the thing, it's not really about Kelce himself. It's about what he represents. He's the mirror Cleveland refuses to look into. He's the voice saying, yo, your fairy tale is falling apart, while the franchise tries to plug its ears. Kelce just reminded the world that the Browns' Cinderella run with Joe Flacco was exactly that. A fantasy, a fairy tale destined to hit midnight, pumpkin carriage and all. And the irony? It's brutal. The Browns have had one of the most chaotic quarterback rooms in the entire NFL. Deshaun Watson was supposed to be the savior, the golden ticket, the man who'd rewrite the franchise's cursed history. But instead, he's been hurt, rusty, and playing like a dude who needs GPS just to find the end zone. Fans waited for fireworks and got static. Then comes Joe Flacco, called up like a last-minute substitute teacher, and suddenly Cleveland looked like an actual football team again. The man rolled in, threw deep like it was 2012.
Somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that
and embarrassed the organization by proving that a 39-year-old free agent who hadn't been there 3 weeks could outperform their $230 million franchise quarterback. That's not just embarrassing, that's franchise-level humiliation. Flacco's run wasn't a miracle, it was a mirror. It showed the whole league what the Browns have been hiding, that their so-called success was smoke, mirrors, and desperation. And Jason Kelce, he didn't create the fire, he just ripped the curtain down. He exposed the Wizard of Haslam for what he really is, a billionaire pretending he's got it all under control while secretly praying no one notices his empire is one sprained ankle away from collapse. No wonder Haslam was fuming. The man's been selling fans this shiny dream of stability and progress, convincing everyone that the Browns were finally turning into a real contender. And then here comes Jason Kelce, chilling in retirement, sipping a smoothie, just casually dropping truth bombs that explode all over Cleveland's illusion. He basically told the world, same old Browns, different year, same circus. And that sent Haslam into meltdown mode.
Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you, and you're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
But the fans? Oh, they weren't mad at Kelce. They were cracking up. Browns fans know pain like it's a second language. They were out there posting memes, tweeting sarcastic, "we're doomed" jokes, even thanking Kelce for saying what they've been screaming into their pillows for years. When your own fan base starts agreeing with your critic instead of you, that's not just bad PR, that's heartbreak with a laugh track. Nothing cuts an owner deeper than realizing the people spending thousands on season tickets trust an outsider more than the guy writing the checks. And then came the media storm. Sports talk shows devoured it like Thanksgiving dinner. Headlines were screaming Cleveland in crisis. Debates exploded over whether the Deshaun Watson deal was the biggest franchise mistake since ever. And rival fans across the league were piling on like hyenas at a buffet. Here's the tragic comedy of it all. Cleveland could have a top 5 defense, a playoff berth, even a Coach of the Year trophy. And the narrative would still find a way to paint them as a disaster in motion. And the wildest part? Most of it's self-inflicted. Other teams make mistakes. The Browns build monuments to theirs. They don't just trip on the sidewalk. They host a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the fall and call it a new direction. That Deshaun Watson contract wasn't just a gamble. It was a kamikaze dive into financial chaos with every single dollar locked in. And now, when Jason Kelce points out the obvious, that Cleveland handcuffed itself to a quarterback who hasn't looked elite in years, it cuts deep, because deep down, they know he's right. They can't cut him, they can't trade him, and unless Watson somehow resurrects his Houston form from the ashes, the Browns are stuck dragging that contract around like a ball.
Where now Tyler Huntley would be, right behind Flacco. They need to take Flacco and just put him away, get him ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, don't even worry.
Put him in the cryo chamber that Bobby Carpenter sleeps in every night.
Yeah, does not need to play at all. Barely practice because they're having to sign now another quarterback. And keep in mind, they already have Watson, who's on the
and chain made of dollar bills and bad decisions. Meanwhile, Joe Flacco came strolling in like the ghost of Christmas past, reminding everyone what real, competent quarterback play actually looks like. Browns fans didn't know whether to cheer or cry. The man hadn't even finished unpacking his suitcase, and suddenly he was out there saving their entire season while Deshaun Watson sat on the bench counting guaranteed millions like it was Monopoly night. That's not a fairy tale. It's a straight-up sitcom. The 39-year-old backup turned into the hero, and Cleveland couldn't decide if it was inspired or humiliating. And then comes Jason Kelce, pointing right at the Browns and saying what everyone else was too polite or too scared to admit. This team looks solid on the surface, but underneath, That foundation's cracking. No filters, no sugarcoating, just facts. And that's exactly why Jimmy Haslam lost it. He doesn't care about flaws. Every team's got flaws. What eats him alive is perception. Billionaires like him don't just want to win, they want control of the story. They need fans to believe the team is fine, that progress is real, that buying another $120 jersey is an investment in victory. But in one breath, Jason Kelce bulldozed that fantasy like it was paper thin. Suddenly, Cleveland didn't look like a contender. They looked like the NFL's most dramatic reality show, where every episode ends in chaos. And honestly, that's the beauty of it. The Browns can't escape themselves. They can stack talent, ride hot streaks, even sneak into the playoffs. But one honest comment from a retired lineman sends the whole organization spiraling. It's not even about football anymore. It's about pride, ego, and denial.
You were right, and I was wrong. We ain't never seen nothing like shit.
I told you. Let's go.
Because when you said that early on, I'm like, what are you talking about? They carried the games in Oklahoma, but that was just Oklahoma. That was for Baker. It was like the Oklahoma fan base. They carried the games in Norman, Browns games in Norman. I'm like, that was just as big.
Are you telling me that this is the biggest circus the Browns have ever been a part of?
Yes.
Jay, you not.
Yes.
Wait, because I remember, like, I'm not draft.
I told you.
The Browns keep tripping over their own shoelaces, then acting like it was part of the plan. If you ever wondered why Jason Kelce's comments hit Cleveland like a bomb, just follow the receipts. It's not about emotions. It's about math, money, and contracts that make every mistake permanent. The truth hurts, but in Cleveland, it always finds a way to echo louder than the victories. It's the injuries and the cruel reality that in the AFC North, good enough means you're already done for. Deshaun Watson is either hurt, rusty, or out there playing like some random guy who wandered in from a Saturday flag football league. Every time Browns fans start to hope, just a little, that he'll finally turn back into that Houston superstar version of himself, reality smacks them across the face. Because $230 million guaranteed doesn't buy miracles. It just buys a front row seat to disappointment with a complimentary headache. And then there's Joe Flacco. Oh man, the ultimate plot twist. The dude was practically retired, probably spending more time picking lawn fertilizer than studying playbooks.
I don't necessarily trust this coaching staff to develop a quarterback or to evaluate the quarterback position. They've made some really oddball decisions at this position over the last several years, and I don't blame anybody for questioning, do these guys actually know what they're doing?
I don't think that's unfair at all. The thing I would say is that they're desperate. They're very desperate. Like the entire organization is desperate. And if you really think they're going back to the coaches' offices and all getting around the table after sessions and being like, guys, Shedeur is unbelievable, but I really think we should try to prove that Dylan is better than him.
Yet he steps in, dusts off the cobwebs, and outperforms Watson like it's the easiest thing in the world. That's not a feel-good redemption arc. That's an indictment. That's the football gods holding up a giant neon sign saying, "You paid how much for Watson?" It's like watching someone buy a Lamborghini that can't start, while their old pickup truck wins the race. Now let's talk cap space, because the Browns' money mess is just as tragic as their quarterback carousel. Watson's deal didn't just strain the budget, it handcuffed the franchise worse than an overzealous TSA agent at the airport. Nearly a quarter of their entire salary cap is tied up in one player who can't stay healthy or consistent. That means the Browns are out here patching holes with duct tape instead of building real depth. The kind you need to survive in the most brutal division in football. And speaking of that division, good luck, Cleveland. This isn't some friendly mid-tier neighborhood where mediocrity gets rewarded. No, this is the NFL's version of the Hunger Games. The Ravens are stacked. Lamar Jackson is out there playing video game football while Mark Andrews catches everything like he's got glue on his hands.
For the Cleveland Browns.
How about that?
Friday night in their preseason opener.
I'd be excited, obviously, if I'm a Browns fan. Like the fact that you get to see him, like that's fun. Like if you're a fan of that team, that's fun that you get to see this guy that is this huge polarizing figure, especially coming out of this NFL draft. I wonder if it's kind of a disservice to him, though.
How?
Because he's been the fourth string quarterback. And you're just kind of throwing him in there.
Backed by a defense that makes quarterbacks cry for their moms. The Bengals have Joe Burrow, cool as ever, who could probably throw touchdowns blindfolded with one arm tied behind his back. And the Steelers, they don't even know who their quarterback is half the time and still manage to win 9 or 10 games every season. Why? Because Mike Tomlin refuses to let them fall apart. That man could win games with a folding chair at quarterback. Meanwhile, Cleveland's sitting on a mountain of wasted money, fragile dreams, and a quarterback who's become a punchline instead of a promise. So where does that leave the Browns? Exactly where Jason Kelce said, in trouble. They're like a guy walking into a heavyweight fight wearing pool floaties, praying no one notices. Yeah, the defense was elite this past season, no one's denying that, but in the NFL, dominance doesn't carry over on good vibes alone. You need structure, depth, and consistency, or that empire crumbles fast. Because here's the truth. Injuries happen, players age, and talented coordinators get poached by hungrier teams. One season you're terrifying offenses, the next you're giving up 30 points and wondering what happened. And when that day comes, and it always does, the burden slides right back to the offense. The same offense that's currently being held hostage by a contract so outrageous it should be printed in college textbooks under financial disasters in sports. And don't even get started on the injury curse. Cleveland's medical staff probably feels like they're running an ER instead of a football facility. Every week, it's another update, another setback, another sigh from fans who've seen this movie too many times, and that's what makes Kelce's words so powerful. He didn't expose a secret. He just said out loud what every Browns fan's been muttering under their breath.
On why we can't get over this fact that we can't get our franchise quarterback. I mean, you see the jerseys. I'm tired of seeing the jerseys. I'm tired of the names just going and going and going. I literally thought Brandon Weeden was going to be our guy at one point. And then I'll never forget I think it was a preseason game, a flag goes over his head and he's trying to get out of the flag while they're doing the national anthem. And I'm like, oh my.
After the third injury report of the week, this team is one bad break away from another implosion. And with Cleveland's luck, that break feels pre-scheduled. The fans know it, the rivals know it, heck, even the players probably know it deep down. Sure, the Browns have stars on defense, dangerous playmakers on offense, and a coaching staff that, for now, seems competent. But paper doesn't win games in the AFC North. Reality does. And reality doesn't care about hype, contracts, or press conferences. It only cares about who's still standing when the hits keep coming. And reality doesn't lie. It says you need 3 things to survive in the AFC North: a reliable quarterback, cap flexibility, and durability. And what does Cleveland have? None of that. Not even close. Baltimore's got Lamar turning defenses into highlight reels. Cincinnati's got Burrow slinging missiles, and Pittsburgh, well, they've got Mike Tomlin holding that franchise together with pure grit. Meanwhile, Cleveland's over here praying that hope alone can win games. Jimmy Haslam can fume all he wants, but he can't outrun the truth. He can buy all the press releases in the world, spin as many feel-good headlines as his PR team can write, and flash those trust the process smiles for the cameras, but the numbers don't lie. The math doesn't change. The division isn't getting softer, and that $230 million mistake, it's not going anywhere. It's glued to this franchise like a bad tattoo. No matter how shiny the Browns look during Joe Flacco's magical cameo, they're still staring down the barrel of their own mess. Jason Kelce didn't say anything cruel. He just told it like it is. Cleveland's in trouble, and judging by the receipts, he's not wrong. Like, subscribe, and share if you want more wild football drama, because with Cleveland, the chaos never sleeps. See you on the next one.